Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting Daily December. This is Daily December 2015, day 25. I'm going to start this off right away with this warning. I'm going to be talking about The Force Awakens. I'm going to be talking about some very specific facts involving the plot of The Force Awakens. This is going to contain massive spoilers. If you watch this, you will know probably every single plot point and twist and everything else involved in Star Wars The Force Awakens. So, if you haven't seen it and you don't want it to be spoiled, don't watch this video. Please don't get upset at me for spoiling the movie for you. I am giving you ample warning. I am spending over a minute talking about how much you don't want to watch this video if you haven't seen it already, if you haven't seen the movie yet. However, for those of us that have seen it, this is my personal opinion on it. I would like to start off with the fact that I believe that I'm probably the only person on the internet that did not think The Force Awakens was the most amazing movie ever and fixed all of the problems with Star Wars movies. Was it the worst movie I've ever seen? Absolutely not. However, I don't think it was nearly as amazing as everybody says it was. I think, for the most part, the movie was very derivative. A lot of the big surprises in the movie were blatantly obvious, and I didn't like a lot of different things that are going to sound really nitpicky, but a lot of that is due to the fact that I've been I was raised on Star Wars. Some of my earliest memories are watching the original trilogy with my dad. He used to, before we could read, he would actually read the subtitles when Jabba the Hutt and all those people spoke in alien languages. I still hear his voice when I watch the original trilogy. That's how often we watched it with my dad. Um, so. And then, in addition to that, I have read a lot of the Expanded Universe books. I have done a lot of study into myself. I know the 7 lightsaber styles, and I know where they're most useful and where they're least useful. I know which styles were used by which Jedi Masters. It's crazy the amount of just bizarre stuff that I know. The first thing I want to talk about, if you guys watched my spoiler-free review, you heard me mention something about the music just didn't seem as majestic. Found out why. Little bit of Star Wars history for you. The Star Wars music has been composed by John Williams since the first movie. And he did compose the music in this. I still have not been able to look up if he was actually the director of the orchestra or not. I haven't had time to look it up. But I do know he composed the music. However, another piece of Star Wars history, the music for every single major Star Wars film ever has always been played by the London Symphony Orchestra. The London Symphony Orchestra is one of the oldest symphony orchestras that are currently playing now. They are world renowned for how phenomenal these guys are. They generally sit at around 100 pieces, and they have played the entire score of every Star Wars movie ever until this one. This one, they used what's called a freelance orchestra. Basically, they had people audition for the parts to make sure that they could play them well, and then they just kind of pieced together kind of the same way you would cast a movie, is they just picked the people they thought would do the parts, the best, and they auditioned, they put the people together, and then they played it. There's advantages and disadvantages to this, but one of the big advantages of using an orchestra that plays together all the time is the fact that balance is always going to be better because they know how all the other instruments sound with each other, and the group itself is going to just gel better. And I think that was really apparent when you listen to the music from the movie. It doesn't have, as much power as it did when the London Symphony Orchestra is playing it. One of the things that caught my ear immediately during the end credits is you always have the ba-da-da fade, and immediately credits come out. You know, ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Uh, Eventually, you have this run where it's violins going. And if you listen to it in the old ones, it's this incredibly smooth run. Like the people playing it just get it very, very smooth. You hear this just, and it's very, very well. If you listen to it in the new movie, it's and it's very percussive and very staccato. And it's different from literally all 6 other movies. They've never done it that way because that's not how the London Symphony Orchestra plays it. But this freelance orchestra decided that was the way that they wanted to play it, and it just doesn't sound right. Again, it sounds nitpicky, but music is a big deal to me. So, excuse me. Going past the music to the actual plot of the movie. This was episode 4. Part 2. That's exactly what it was. It's an almost identical story to episode 4. They wanted to get back to the feel of the original trilogy, and understand that completely. However, they literally you start off with some Imperials, and there's a droid that has stolen information that somehow gets onto a desert planet, and then that droid has to get onto the Millennium Falcon, and then they have to go somewhere to try and find, the rebels, or in this case, it's the Resistance, and then they have to go to a giant super weapon to save somebody and blow it up. Like it was episode 4, part 2. That's exactly what it was, and. It wasn't a bad movie. Like I said, it wasn't a bad movie, but everyone keeps talking about, wow, this is so amazing. It's like, no, it's like everything in the movie was, I mean, they even had, teacher person. This time the character archetypes that they have in there. You have the young, the young hero, who in this case was Rey. And then you have the brash, rogue, who this case was Finn, because as much as he was a stormtrooper, he's kind of bumbling, and I'll get to Finn in a little bit. He kind of presents himself as, hey, I'm a big deal, and he tries to kind of show himself off as very nonchalant and very, very roguish. And then you have the old wise man, who in this time was Solo. And then what happens to the old wise man is he meets the great evil dude, who is Kylo Ren in this one, and then gets killed by him. And him getting killed motivates, the young hero to do something great. Literally, this is Star Wars Episode 4 again, and I can understand why he did it, but I want something new, especially with how amazing the expanded universe was and how much there was there. When Abrams basically said, oh, and Disney in general says, by the way, expanded universe doesn't exist anymore. We don't want to have to hold ourselves to that because there's so much there. I'm like, okay, if that's what you're going to do, if you're going to throw out, 30 some odd years of books and things like that have been painstakingly cataloged and things like that so that they don't contradict each other too much, and are all canon and that stuff like that, you want to throw all that out, fine. It's got to be something good, though. If you've got a really great idea and, the expanded universe isn't going to let you do that, fine. Come up with whatever you want. However, It better be good. And this wasn't. He took the plot from another movie and just, changed a few parts. And I personally was not thrilled with that. Everyone else thought it was the most amazing thing ever. Um, the other thing I didn't like about the movie was the entire movie is just a massive trailer for the next movie. Everything in this one is set up specifically so that you want to see the next movie. Nothing is explained. We don't know why Luke ran away, other than, Kylo Ren went and killed uh, all the other apprentices. We have no idea why the person that the last time he was faced with adversity went and faced it now turns into a whiny little bitch and runs away from everything. We have no idea. We really don't know why. Like, we know it was because Kylo Ren went to the dark side that Leia and Han split up. Again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you have an incredibly strong female character and an incredibly strong male character that is kind of shown and grown through the first three movies to show that they truly love each other, that they just go, oh, okay, we're just going to break it off because our kid went crazy. I don't accept it, and they didn't really explain it either. Eventually, we will find out, probably in 8 or 9, we will find out the whole story. This one, we didn't. We didn't find out much of anything. Everything was teased and everything was very hush-hush. We have no idea who Snoke is or where he came from. We barely have any idea who Kylo Ren is. And the reveal was done super, super poorly, in my personal opinion. You just have like this offhand comment of, oh yeah, and Han Solo's your father. It was dumb. And, I didn't think it was very well done. And then you get to the end of the movie, like, they hyped up Luke so much. So much. Like, they have the entire trailer where they take Luke's line from episode 6, where he's like, everyone in the family has a force. My father had it. I have it. My sister have it. Luke doesn't say a damn thing in the entire movie. The only time you see him is in the last, 3 minutes of the movie, and 2 minutes and 59 seconds of that is him just sitting there staring. Like, he and Rey just sit there staring at each other for way too long. Way, way too long. Like, it went past awkward pause to the point where it's just creepy. She's sitting there with the lightsaber held out, and he's just like, and that, and it goes on for way too long. So, yes. That was the other thing I didn't like about the movie, is just the fact that the whole movie is just a setup for the next one. And if you look, even episode 4, which was designed to lead directly into episode 5, they have a plot, they have kind of a resolution at the end, and other than the fact that they blew up, the new Death Star, Starkiller Base, which was a giant MacGuffin, the whole thing, like, there was no resolution in this whatsoever. Like, episode 4, there was resolution. They did that, they ended it, and you had this complete story. And even episode 4, you had a complete story in there, in that you found out about Luke's father. They were able to get everyone except Luke, or except Han, I mean, off of there. You knew what the next step was. But they had that resolution. They were able to escape from Hoth. They were able to do a couple things. And yes, it did lead into the next movie, but there was a completeness there that doesn't happen in this one. This one's just a giant trailer for the next movie. So yeah, that was my personal opinion there. Now I want to talk about characters. Rey is so awesome. Daisy Ridley did such a good job as Rey. Like, everything she did was so believable, and you could tell her motivations the entire time. She was a very, very cool character. I really enjoyed watching her do that. There were only a couple things that I didn't like, and they had nothing to do with Daisy Ridley. or her portrayal of the character, and they were just bad directorial decisions or bad writing, which in this case is the same person because Abrams wrote it and directed it. Um, uh, I was totally like, some people are basically calling Rey giant Mary Sue, and I can understand the thought process behind it. I'm completely fine with her being a mechanical genius and understanding like the Millennium Falcon, all that stuff. Um, if you read the books or if you watched the first movie, uh, uh, Skywalkers in general, and Jedi in general that don't grow up in the temple tend to have affinities with certain things. And her affinity could just be machines. She's just really, really good at them. So I'm completely fine with that. Um, that's absolutely great. Um, when she basically taught herself in the middle of torture how to do the Jedi mind trick, I don't agree with that. She literally just found out she had force powers and then did a relatively advanced technique. Because you'll notice the Jedi mind trick was not something that Obi-Wan did ever in Episode 1. It was something that Qui-Gon did because it takes time and training to be able to do that. And she's a young kid that just somewhere out of the blue taught herself how to do that after never seeing anyone ever do that because Kylo Ren never used it. The Jedi in general are a myth, so nobody believes that they're real. So the most she might have heard of is a story talking about how Jedi could control people's minds. And if there hasn't been a real Jedi in 10 or 20 years at this point anywhere, and the Jedi as a group haven't existed for close to 60 at this point, yeah, I don't believe that she could teach herself. It was a plot point so they could get her out of there, so that she could save herself as opposed to having to be saved, for the feminist ideal. Which again, I think she's a really cool character, and I love strong female characters in general. I just think that was a plot device, and I don't like seeing that. And the final issue I had with her kind of ties into stuff that I'll go into a little bit more detail. Was her fighting with a lightsaber. I will go into more detail in a little bit, but the lightsaber combat in this in general was bad. Just really, really poorly done. Next character I want to talk about, Poe. I can't remember Poe's last name because they say it like twice, and he says it super, super fast. Poe is awesome. I wish he was in the movie more because he's just a very, very cool character. But because he's in the movie so sparingly, I don't really have a whole lot to say about him other than I enjoyed when he was on screen every single time. I didn't have any issues with anything that he did. I did think how they explained how he survived the TIE fighter crash was another just convenient plot point. Oh yeah, I got thrown out, and then somehow I was able to get off this planet with no difficulty and make it all the way back. Like, you guys had the Millennium Falcon at your command, and you had somebody that knew exactly where to go. Somehow I was able to get all the way back to the Resistance fleet and mount a rescue attempt for you guys in the same amount of time it took you just to get to this planet. And you had a significant head start on me because I didn't wake up until after you guys were off the planet. So, and again, that has nothing to do with the actor's portrayal and everything to do with just poor writing decisions. But other than that, I loved him. He's great. Finn annoyed the hell out of me. He was a whiny bitch the entire movie. And then magically, by the time they get to the Resistance base, he turns into super adventure man that's willing to brave, risk his life for Rey. And I can understand, they built a little bit of camaraderie just from, but they were in literally one battle together, and then she got captured, and he spent literally his entire life training with his regiment of stormtroopers, and he ditched them in a flat minute without a second thought whatsoever. These people that he knew significantly better than he would know Rey because he grew up with them, ditches them in a flat minute. He spends like a day and a half with Rey, and he's so massively into her. Not romantically, they're bros. Um, that he drops everything to go and try and save her. I didn't really believe his motivations. I didn't like uh, the actor's portrayal, and I can't remember the actor that did it. I was just not thrilled with his take on the character. I can understand where the character came from, and I can understand the plot reasons why he needed to be there, but he just felt forced in every scene that he was in. Like, Ray felt so natural in the entire movie. He just was. And Poe is the same way in the few scenes he was in. He just fit in really, really well. And the rest of it just no. Like, Finn just felt like he was forced in there to get where they were going. Um, so yeah. Um, Next, I want to talk about lightsaber combat, because this really bothers me from a swordsmanship perspective. I've studied sword play for the better part. Oh, at least almost as long as I've been studying martial arts, so around 15, 16 years now. I've studied swordplay, and I've studied every single swordplay I could find out. I did fencing for a little bit. I've learned a little bit of kendo. I've actually studied the lightsaber combat, or the martial arts styles that influenced the lightsaber combat, which was a lot of kendo, um, and a few other ones. And so I've done stage combat. I was a fight director for a show. I live for swordplay. I really do. And swordplay sucked in this. Um, First of all, I was a little bit upset with the fact that not only could Finn pick up the lightsaber, but he could use it not well. Like, in general, he used it like just a massive club anytime he used it, which makes sense for someone that has no weaponry training. They're just going to try and hit things as hard as they can. But from a technical standpoint, one of the reasons you only see Jedi wandering around with lightsabers is lightsabers are very, very weird. There's this sense that people have, that lets you know, like, I don't have to look to know that my hand is roughly around head level right now. And if I move it in, you can see it's right about level with my head. And I don't have to see it to know that. You have this feeling, and I can't remember what it's called, that lets you know where your limbs are. That extends to things that you're holding, especially when you're trained to use them. One of the things that you'll hear swordplay teachers talking about a lot is the idea is that your weapon should be an extension of yourself. Um, and the way that works is due to the weight of the blade and everything, you know exactly where the blade is, and that's how you can do, the twirls and things like that with the blades, because you know where it is. Lightsaber, the thing that makes it so difficult is the fact that the blade itself has no weight. The blade doesn't exist unless you look at it. Once you look away, there's no weight, there's no mass to it. It's pure energy. So one of the reasons that only Jedi use them is without having that weight there, it's unbelievably easy to hit yourself with the blade, because unless you're looking at the blade, which defeats the purpose of using it, you don't actually know where the blade is. You can guess, and with enough training, you can kind of get the idea of, okay, well, whenever my hand is like this, it's always going to be this way. But one of the things that you do, and you'll see this with, the Jedi themselves, they twirl it, you actually let go of most of the hilt of the blade, and you roll it, I'll do it here, you actually roll the blade through this curve here to make it to flip and turn and things like that. And so it's very rarely just pointing straight up. A lot of times it's pointing in this direction or in this direction, depending on how you're rolling it. So the fact that Finn didn't cut himself up in the multiple times that he used it annoyed the hell out of me. The fact that Finn didn't get his ass handed to him within 2 seconds when he started fighting Kylo Ren annoyed me to just beyond. Kylo Ren learned from Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker went toe-to-toe with the best swordsman in the galaxy. Now, he was well past his prime. Darth Vader was well past his prime at this point, so he wasn't nearly as good as he was when he was fighting Obi-Wan on Mustafar. However, he still was incredibly deadly. Even after Order 66, when he first got into the armor, he went out and myrtleized a ton of Jedi. So even if he was a little bit out of practice, you're still looking at two very, very skilled swordsmen. And Luke learned from Yoda, who was seriously the greatest swordsman aside from, I think it was Mace Windu, was the only person that was technically better. And I think that was just the fact that Mace Windu used his lightsaber a lot more than Yoda ever did. Yoda was very much into Force. So, how in the world did Kylo Ren learn from a master and learn literally nothing about how to use a sword effectively? Like, he sucked. Absolutely. Like, every strike he did, two-handed, just beat him to death with the blade. He turned in a swirl every so often. That was it. Everything else about it was just he didn't use any of the traditional stances that you would use in lightsaber combat or in kendo or anything like that. He was horrendous at it. He sucked. So yeah, the fact that he didn't immediately just disarm, like without even thinking, like if Finn went up to Obi-Wan Kenobi, even like old Ben Obi-Wan, the first thing he would have done is, if you guys have ever seen The Mask of Zorro with Antonio Banderas, there's a scene in the beginning where Banderas is drunk, and the old Zorro comes in, and Banderas pulls out his sword and gets ready, and the old Zorro just sits there and disarms him and slaps him across, just beats him up with a stick. That's what would have happened as soon as Finn came at old Ben. He would have just went bzz, bzz, slapped him on the ass and gone, okay, good. Kylo Ren should have just wiped the floor with him. He really should have. And then the fight between Kylo and Rey. Again, Rey technically has a little bit more training martially than Finn did. Specifically because if you see her in the rest of the movie, she fights with a staff. That takes martial training, and that takes awareness and things like that that you can translate. Like I do. I've done katana work and I've done bow staff work, and there are some aspects of using a bow that I can translate to using a sword. So that makes sense that she would have a little bit of skill. She still should have been completely destroyed by Kylo Ren. Even after Finn went and cut him on the shoulder, which never should have happened, Kylo Ren had traditional training with a lightsaber, not only from Luke, but theoretically this Snoke guy should have given him something as well. I mean, Palpatine trained, what's his face, Darth Maul, to turn him into crazy bow staff wielding boy. It didn't make sense, even with the Force and everything. It didn't make sense for Rey to be able to completely trounce Kylo Ren. But whatever, let's say that is how it works and everything like that. The actual choreography itself was just abysmal. It was so poorly done, it hurt to watch it. And that took me out of the immersion so quick. And so I couldn't stand that. Kylo Ren himself, if you guys haven't checked it, I can't remember what it's called. Just search for emo Kylo Ren. It is the funniest thing in the world. It's a Twitter account that basically turns Kylo Ren into this angsty teen. And it's so funny. But that's literally what he was. He was this little bitch. He'd throw temper tantrums all the time. He'd whine. He's like, Grandpa, make me evil again. He was just a whiny little bitch the entire time. And you could tell that he was incredibly powerful. Like, he stopped a blaster bolt in midair. Vader couldn't do that. Like, Vader could just deflect things with his glove. Kylo Ren stopped a blaster bolt in midair and just held it there. Not even like holding his hand out. He just held it there while carrying on a conversation. Like, he was incredibly powerful. And yet he just with his lightsaber. It was so, so bad. And I understand that having the crossguard prevents you from doing some of the things you see more traditionally with the lightsabers, because if you twirl it the wrong way, you cut your hand off. So I can understand that. However, a crossguard does not prevent you. Like, I have swords with crossguards on them, like long, like broadsword style crossguards that I can spin and twirl with very little difficulty, and still be able to do something that looks like real swordplay. I have no idea who the swordmaster was for this. I know Bob Anderson, who did all the other movies, and was an absolute, like, he was the best swordmaster in Hollywood. He taught people, if I remember correctly, I may be getting this wrong, he taught people like Errol Flynn. He did The Princess Bride. He did all the Star Wars movies. I think he did The Mask of Zorro. Like, think of any movies that, I think the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie he might have done. That was towards the end of his life. He died in 2012. But think any, like, amazing, like, swashbuckling style movie. Bob Anderson was probably the guy that was the swordmaster from it, for those, because he was the best in the business. And whoever was the swordmaster for this, I just don't think had the ability to step into those shoes. It didn't seem good. So yeah, I talked about how much I despise Kylo Ren as a bad guy because he's just a little bitch. The final thing, the major spoiler that everyone was talking about to make people mad, the scene where Kylo kills Han, I hated it. First of all, I hated that they called him Ben. In the expanded universe, Han and Leia get together. They have 3 kids. They have 2 twins who are Jason and Jaina, and they have a third one named Anakin, whom they name after Leia's father. In the expanded universe, Jason starts off as good, actually gets apprenticed under Luke for a little bit. He gets taught, he and his sister, and then Lobaka, who's Chewbacca's cousin or nephew, something like that, and then this girl named Tenel Ka, all get mentored by Luke for a while. And then eventually he goes to the dark side. He becomes, and here's spoilers for the expanded universe. He becomes a Sith known as Darth Caedus, and his sister Jaina actually has to kill him, and it's so beautifully done. Like, you get to watch his fall to the dark side over an entire, like, 12-book series, and it's done really, really well. Ben from the expanded universe was Luke's kid. It was Ben Skywalker. He named him Ben after Obi-Wan Kenobi because he called him Old Ben, and that was a significant figure. I don't know why Han and Leia would name their kid Ben. Han knew Obi-Wan Kenobi for a grand total of, what, a day-ish? You know, the trip to Alderaan, that's the only time he knew him. And he didn't connect with the guy much at all. He didn't like him. He didn't talk to him much. Obi-Wan had a massive effect on Luke. He trained him originally, and then he kept coming back as a ghost over and over and over again. Like, he was a massive figure in Luke's life, so it would make perfect sense for Luke to name his kid after him. Makes no sense. Like, Leia never knew the guy. She never even met him. Leia would have no reason to name their kid after Obi-Wan Kenobi, and neither would Han. I really, really wanted them to name him Jason, just as a nod to, hey, I know we completely ruined the expanded universe for you guys, so let's throw you a bone, let's call him Jason. At this point in the movie, you already know he's Han's kid, let's just call him Jason. No, they had to call him Ben. He was really stupid. And then when he gets out there, it was so blatantly obvious that Han was going to die. The second he stepped out there and called out Ben's name, he was dead. And it was so... I hated that scene. I like Han Solo, so that might be part of why I didn't like this. But it just was horrible. Watching him walk out there, and then you hear, Ren sit there and go, well, I need you to help me do something, Father. And it's like, oh yeah, what's that going to be, son? I'm totally going to be up for that. No. Han shot first. The reason he shot first is because he knew Greedo was going to try and kill him, and he couldn't talk his way out of it. That's the kind of person Han is. And yet he just sits there and helps his son kill him for no reason. Like, it was the most pointless death in Star Wars. And I hated it so much. And I understand the thought process Abrams had, but it almost seems like Abrams went out of his way to ignore everything about Star Wars in general. Like, he knew the basic plot, like he read the Cliff's Notes version, and then ignored everything else about the characters, and just kind of recreated them the way he wanted them. The fact that Han Solo didn't just lose the Millennium Falcon, he had it stolen for years. Like, not just, somebody was able to run off with. No, for years, somebody stole his ship. That just blows my mind. And it was simply done to introduce the Millennium Falcon, like it was a plot device. It had there's no reason from a story standpoint that Han needed to lose the Millennium Falcon. He didn't. It was just a plot device so that they could let Rey fly it, give her kind of a connection to Han. So yes, I realize I'm complaining a lot about this movie because I was so hyped about this movie. I thought it was going to be the most amazing thing, and it just, for me, it wasn't. Is it still a good movie? Yeah, it's a decent movie. It's fun to watch. Like I said, the things that it did well, it did massively well. But the things it did poorly, it just died on. And I sincerely hope that that episode 8 cleans up a lot of the missteps that 7 had. I hope episode 8 actually explains things. Because 7 did nothing. You got no explanation for anything ever. It was just this, let's leave this little plot line here. And, I'm going to drop this little plot line over here. Oh, no, let's put this little plot line over here. Oh, it's so amazing. Yeah, it explained nothing. It just gave you question after question after question after question after question. And I got bored with it. I really did. I'm like, really? We don't even know why Luke left. We have a theory that maybe it was because Kylo went batshit crazy because he was a whiny little bitch. But even that doesn't make sense. I mean, Luke went out of his way to confront his father, and yet one bad thing happens and he runs away from the entire galaxy? Like, he was almost as emo as Ren at that point. Dear Lord. So anyway, that was my very, very long, very, very spoiler-filled review of The Force Awakens. If you haven't seen it and you watch this, why? But go out and see it anyways because, it's still a fun movie. I just don't think it's nearly as amazing as everyone says it is. I hope the next one is better. To be blunt. So yeah, that's all for me today. This is the third video I've put out today. I'm very, very tired. I'm exhausted. So I'm probably not going to put another video out today. But that's all for me. I will see you guys tomorrow for another Daily December, all right? Bye-bye!